name is Chris McMahon. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is my 99 Evo chopper. I was looking for a bike to build after I sold my last chopper. A buddy of mine had the front end on this thing, which is a 9/over panhead front end, and wound up building the entire bike around that. This front end came off an old bike that I had seen from a guy back in Chicago, and I wanted to kind of build a similar bike to that with the same kind of stance to it. Then I bought a wrecked 99 Softail and then ripped the motor and the trans and the oil tank out of there, and then built it up from that. So I can't stand forward controls. They're super uncomfortable to me, so it made sense to run those Frisco mids, and I'd never done them before, so why not? When I first sat on it with the mids, it was super sketchy to ride around with the tall bars and that. It was just way different than other bikes that I've built, but slowly getting used to it, and I really dig it. I think the most unique thing about it is the paint on the tank. I had a buddy of mine in Chicago named Matt Carr do the paint. He's done a lot of metal album covers and does comic book art and stuff. And I'd wanted to get a tank painted from him about 10 years ago and never had the money to do it. And finally, we got together and he was able to paint the tank. So one thing I had to really think about and ran into snags with was with the fender. Just a normal mounting setup. The fender wound up being super narrow, couldn't run the normal strap across the tires, so I wound up mounting it from the top, and it just took a little bit to kind of figure out. I literally did everything with a welder and hand tools right here in this garage. It really wound up being exactly what I was looking for. To me, it's to say you did it, to hold all those pieces in your hand and just know that you put it together, and to be able to know your bike. Just do it. Start taking your bike apart and then figure it out, because I didn't know anything when I built my first bike. And you start researching things, asking friends, and then you're eventually like, it doesn't take that much. You realize it's pretty simple and easy, and it goes together pretty quick.
My name's Andrew Riffle, but my buddies all call me Triple. I run Triple's Paintworks out of Phoenix, Arizona. I think I started in like 2013, but I didn't really start going hard on it until like 2015. I was the manager of a skate shop. I worked there for like 9 years. It was the perfect job for like learning, or like getting started on stuff like that, you know, and like every night after work, I would just start working on my buddies' bikes, and before you know it, there's like their buddies wanted their bikes painted and painted my bike too, and it just started as like a convenient thing. I couldn't afford to pay somebody to do my bike, you know? So I tried it on my own bike, and it was fun, and I just got like addicted to trying to figure out how to make it come out better, you know? Now I work full-time at a restoration shop, KG's Classics. We do a bunch of old Chevys and just classic cars. I've tried to do the math and like lurk through my old Instagram and like try to count and stuff, but I think I'd probably be like close to 80 bikes painted. Before you know it, you paint enough bikes and they're gonna be in shows, and winning a show and stuff like that when your buddies are there and your ladies there, that feels good, man. My favorite job is when someone's just like, go crazy, do your thing, you know? But even if the guy's like, you can do whatever you want on my tank, I don't care. Like, I still gotta be like, well, what do you hate then? Tell me that. I don't wanna like throw in a color that you hate, you know? It's fun painting for motorcycle dudes that are like us, and I can relate with them and be like, I get it, it is expensive, you know? But $1,000 goes so far on a motorcycle. You could spend $1,000 on a car so quick and not see anything, you know? I would love for everybody to at least try it so they know that, oh, that's why my bike took that long. And there's a lot of work into it, you know? I don't really know exactly my goals with it, but I know it's just getting bigger, you know? Like, I'm able to book out paint now and like tell people to wait, and they do wait, and that feels good, you know, but I don't want to push it either, you know? I would just say thank you guys for your patience, because it takes me a little longer than other painters because I do have a full-time job, but I appreciate it, you know? So let's keep it going.
name's Ron. I'm from Milwaukee. This is my 1982 Shovelhead. I bought that House of Harley in the 80s. It's been my daily rider ever since. Had it from coast to coast. I even drag raced it on the Milwaukee Mile. Now I'm gonna ice race it today. I mounted 19-inch Sportster mag wheels, front and back. Mounted up ice tires. The 19 on the back was tricky. I had to have the same spacing for the sprocket and the brake rotor. My friend Big Bill machined custom hub spacers for the rear. I added the AMA safety fender. I handmade the fender. I own 7 Metal West custom fenders also. But otherwise, it's pretty much the way I ride it.
Great, actually, dude, it handled so well, man.
My name is Matt Gardepy. This is a 1985 FX Wide Glide. I call it Stocky Erickson. Well, I owned this bike for about 8 years in its stock original version, and I wanted to go a lot faster than the old tired out Evo that was in it. So I decided to look into twin cams, started messing around with trying to stuff it in the frame, and realized that there was a lot more work to stuffing that thing in there than I thought. So the 1985 FX Wide Glide frame was a 1 year or 1.5 year model that Harley did. Basically a shovel head frame, swing arm frame, that they added a bump in the backbone to fit an Evo into it. Did some research, that's all supposed to work, you know, and then you get all the stuff, you get it here, and I'm like, damn, this thing's still not like really sitting in there the right way. And I realized that the front down tubes on the frame would need to be recessed, so I had to clearance it to fit it in there. So once I got the engine in there, where it was supposed to sit, my next step was putting a 5-speed transmission into the thing. I found a 6x5 from Ultima in a 5-speed case. With that, it has a bunch of material on the case because it's not for this bike, essentially. It doesn't fit in with where your swing arm is in the frame. So I had to grind out a big piece of it so that it would fit around where the swing arm is in the chassis. When I had it in its stock form, it was awesome. It was a total dad bike. It was rad to ride around with the lady on the back and do a bunch of camping. That's kind of our gig. But when I decided to change it up, one, aesthetically look a little bit more chopperish, if you will, I kind of started researching more and more different fenders was going to be a big part of like the look. I found a pretty inexpensive way of going about that, and that was through B&C Cycles. It's a guy out in Canada. He makes this whole kit that you see on here. When I called him, we had a talk, and eventually it came down to, hey man, I can ship you it in parts and you can cut it however you want. Basically make it yourself, right? It all showed up at the house. You know, I'm all stoked, excited, and I pull it out and I'm like, ah, I gotta do a bunch of work now on this too. I hit up one of my buddies, my buddy Ian, who lives down the road from me, and kind of told him what I was doing. So I'd already cut it up and kind of started getting it to where we thought it was gonna look good. And then had Ian TIG weld on the back piece. Once we had it all mocked up and tigged on there, it was time to start thinking about making a seat pan. We hit up a local guy around here that does a lot of our seats, Adam, Pierce Street. He made a house call on my birthday, I believe, and foamed it like right in front of us. Had my fiance come over and sit on it, and she gave it the, you know, the thumbs up. I told him I wanted the rolled look, you know, with leather, and I think he totally knocked it out of the park. So while we're working on putting this whole fender kit together and getting the look of it, we got it all on there and we welded it up, and it was pretty obvious that it was sitting really high off the tire profile. Already kind of thought up a solution, and what we came down to was I had another swing arm from an 85 FX Wide Glide, knocked the blocks off of it where the shocks mount, and then we worked out where it would sit best with the fender, and then we welded on the blocks to lower the bike. But we left the original ones on so that I can take it from stock stance height down to the more slammed look for when I'm rocking this fender. I kept the original fender, seat, backrest, and all that stuff because I still love being able to travel on this thing, and it's super easy. I can change out the entire thing back to stock for longer trips and stuff in a matter of like 25 minutes. All the fabricating and all the pre-work I pretty much did here at the garage. Engine I built with a great mentor, Rob Schaff, legendary horsepower guy. He's got decades of experience and success in drag racing, etc. Kind of just took me under his wing and offered his time to walk me through the process. So I brought a 96-inch stock twin cam over to him, and we split the cases. We did the flywheel, basically built it from the ground up. As far as the engine, we put 585 easy start cams. Everything's pretty much S&S inside of it. The big bore kit that we went with was S&S's 110. If you want to go fast, you got to go with some S&S parts. It's reliable and it's an easy bolt on. So he had these crazy ported heads laying around that he sold me for the cheap, because Rob gets really excited on going fast. Once we start the project, he's just like, well, we could get more. Put that whole thing back together, and finally, all the pieces jived. Every part on this bike eventually got touched, and we're thinking about different carb setups and what we were going to use. Classic Rob, he's like, I got just the thing. And what he had was a Super G manifold, but it'll take the E carburetor. The reason we went with that is we were looking for more mid-range. I wanted to ride this bike a little more distance. It's my daily ripper. And just in general, I feel that E's give you a better mid-range. In general, they're an all-around carb, where like a G would be more for just drag racing or really just cracking wide open all the time. So once we got the engine all put together and this bike kind of buttoned up and fired for the first time, we immediately took it over to the dyno. We wanted to get the timing and make sure that the carb was running the right way and everything, so we threw it on there, and the passes that we got were pretty great. Currently, this bike is putting out 113 horsepower to the rear wheel, as well as 124 torque to the rear wheel. I wanted to build this bike because the stock, 80-inch Evo just wasn't really cutting it anymore. I was really looking to get more performance, and I really like the idea of stuffing high performance pieces into a vintage style or older chassis setup, bringing performance to old bikes. To people that are trying to get into building a bike for the first time, all I can say is be a sponge. Learn when to shut up and when to listen, and spend a lot of time doing your homework and your research. Learn from people in your tribe, you know what I mean? Learn from older people that have been doing this for a long time and take their advice on it, and save up some money.
My name is Chris Graves, and this is my 1975 Shovelhead chopper. It was a Born Free invited build, which is my first and only. So I built this bike in 2018, mostly between like January and June. Born Free's in June, so it was basically the craziest single year of my entire life. I've always wanted to build a shovel with two front heads, and I always wanted to build like a really rideable, reliable shovel with two front heads, because when you've seen it, it's typically on a super stroked big cam performance motor. It's got a 74 cubic inch displacement, but it's got a bigger cam in there, and it does perform pretty well with the two carb setup, those two amels, which are tricky to tune. But yeah, it just performs like a hopped up little shovel. Yeah, frame's 100% me. It's all chrome moly 4130 tubing. It took a long time to make that frame, and then I wanted to keep the rear end narrow but still fit what I have going on with those little swing arms and needle bearings. The rear suspension, it's pretty cool. The wheel travel is about 1 1/8 inch. That's about the vertical wheel travel, which if you've ridden hardtails, you have. It's just enough to take that sting away in your kidneys. The seat post of the frame is actually an air reservoir. And then that cross member that goes across the top of the seat post is a manifold, And then so I have a few little MPT fittings, and then I plumb that into a couple solenoid valves so you can just raise it and lower it. And then there's another circuit that has a fill valve and a dump valve for the seat. So the seat also has air bags under it that like raise the seat up. And so you can fill that on demand and dump it on demand. So there's an onboard compressor. Well, I love the way two magnetos looks. I'm not gonna like discount that, but I really love the way it works. And when you think about what has to be reliable, like think about airplanes, small aircraft like Cessnas, they all have redundant ignition systems that aren't dependent on electrical input. Even if one shits out, and the battery shits out, you're still like in the sky, or in my case, on the road. I get more questions about that front end than probably anything else on this bike. It seems like every week somebody says, where did you get the tubes? Or what did you do to your tubes? And they're titanium nitride, like you'd see on a drill bit, that yellow color. But you actually just buy them from Custom Cycle Engineering makes them, and they make them up to 4 over for the FXR guys. All that bronze colored, and then as well as some other colors like the pipes and the carburetors, and there's 3 colors of Cerakote on there, not just the bronze. But yeah, it's a firearms coating is really the market that stuff took off in, but it is used on other products. The advantages to it is it's really, really tough, has really good scratch resistance, and it's essentially a dimensionless coating, so you don't have to mask anything. And it does well with temperature. They have a bunch of formulations. So the dash, when do you ever have an opportunity to put gauges on a chopper? So when I had that opportunity with this dash, I wanted to like pack them in there. I have the stack tachometer, which is known to work well with magneto noise. And then I have stack like voltmeter. Another stack matching gauge I found is actually a clock. So there's like a little analog 12-volt clock in there. So I started Fast Eddie Co. Man, it's been a couple of years now, and I just really wanted to offer tools that make them feel good about what they just spent money on, because some of those things can be so expensive, and I bought so many, you know, but I thought, man, for less than that, I could make something nicer that's like a true heirloom tool, you know, something that you could really pass down. But it started off with a valve spring compressor, and then I made a few and sold them, and then I made some more and sold them, and then I decided to start designing some other tools where I thought I had some ideas that are different, not just like eBay knockoffs from, you know, somebody else. So just taking that and applying it to like create things that will last and that people can like sleep at night after they bought. I don't know, I've always loved choppers, even the basic hardtail, simple, timeless, lack of real functionality, that's my draw. But if you could take that and then add a little functionality to it and still, I don't know, hopefully keep it tasteful in the same way, or keep it like doing the same thing to you visually, then why not?
My name is Eric Schilke, aka Sideways Shakes, and this is my 1996 Sportster Hugger turned into a hooligan flat tracker. GNHC categorizes anything that is a hooligan as a production frame motorcycle over 650cc. So why I started with a Harley was because of Flat Out Fridays hooligan class, and I ride Harleys. But really what got me started in this entire thing was that 115th Beach Brawl. When they ran around the track and those hooligans came out, and you just saw the Sportsters rev up, you're like, I would love to be out there on that sand. So I found this bike from an old lady up in Kewaskum, Wisconsin. Her son was selling it, and I got it for a steal because she upgraded to a Fat Bob, I believe it was. I bought the bike immediately thinking I was going to start racing it, and I bought it in September of 2018, and I really got into it that winter and spring of 2019. I put Super Trap exhaust on it, a Mikuni carburetor, Öhlins 15-inch rear shocks, and a 19-inch rear wheel kit conversion initially. I replaced the 16-inch rear wheel for a 19-inch rear with the Vulcan conversion kit. In order to flat track, you have to have a 19-inch front and rear wheel and run flat track tires, which are all come in 19-inch sizes. So you have to take a front wheel and convert it with a hub kit for the rear. The reason I went with Super Trap exhaust is because it's the quickest bolt-on performance immediately, and you're able to tune it a little bit better with a Mikuni carburetor. The two of them kind of tandem together. The air cleaner is actually a big air intake from Hammer Performance. And I also put in a horseshoe breather kit that removes the return breathers. They loop together and then they exhaust out instead of recycling it back into the air cleaner. You're getting fresh oxygen in there. I got the Saddleman seat kit from Lowbrow. You weld on a seat pan bar and then you put the seat right on top of it. You can run a stock seat, but your seat position and how you move across the track kind of requires a longer cafe style racing seat. So my bars are Pro Taper 7/8 track bars. They're a little bit longer than stock bars, so you get a little bit better leverage. I also run a Motion Pro throttle with a variable cam, and I also run a Pro Taper clutch perch that breaks away should I low side. On a standard clutch, when you go down, it doesn't bend backwards and it'll snap the clutch lever clear off. That actually happened to me one time, and I learned the hard way that if you have a breakaway clutch perch, you can low side and pick the bike up, keep going. Here's the thing about gearing. I'm learning. It's like fishing lures, where you don't know what works until you put it on there. I have a box of gears that I chuck on there, and hopefully you can run the same chain. If not, you need to add or reduce a link or whatever. You can change your gearing on the fly, and you get that quick competitive edge by adding or subtracting it to it. Almost all the time, your rear gearing is going to be your deciding factor on where you want to be in what gear. So if you're on a short track with a lot of teeth, you're going to run second gear and touch the rev limiter all the time. Or if you're on a longer track and you're in third gear, you'd gear down a little bit. I removed the mid controls to go to a rear set, only to move my feet position a little bit farther back. Putting your foot lower and back allows you to plant a little bit of the weight onto that rear wheel and hook up better. The rear set kit that I got is from Louis Lauders up in West Bend Harley. I went up there and Louis kind of gave me some pointers immediately on what I needed and what I didn't need. And he actually, to be honest, was brutally honest. He was like, this sport will buck you faster than you could think. Louis Lauders is like a legend in flat tracking. So walking out of there with the words that he said were kind of special in a way, because it was like, okay, you think you're gonna flat track. Okay, you think you're gonna do this stuff, but wait till you actually do a lap and then come back and tell me how you feel about it. Because I think he saw the vinegar, me walking in with this, oh, I'm gonna flat track this thing. After talking to Louis, it was like, oh, there's more to this than I thought. Compared to other sports that probably are a little more competitive and they kind of see you as like competition, flat tracking is a little bit different. They see you as somebody that enjoys the sport and they invite you in. Joining the sport the way I did, it was humbling. You come into this thing thinking you're gonna do all these moves and you go around in a circle, how hard can it be? But that's not the case at all. And when I first got into it, I learned that immediately you need to take a second, be humble, and listen to everybody around you. And the culture at the track is what keeps me there. They invite you, they go, okay, hey, you don't know yet, but here's how this works. And it's that culture that surprised me and actually keeps me coming back. This is a journey that I went on not to be professional, not to be the fastest dude in the world, but to learn it and to immerse myself in it. I want to walk away with being able to say, I did that, I was there, and I was part of that.
My name is JJ Flaherty, and this is my 1949 Panhead chopper. Well, I built this bike for People's Champ competition for Born Free 7. The way you got into that contest was it was kind of like an Instagram-driven deal for, garage builder kind of guy to get a chance at the Born Free show. Well, there's probably like 100 people that entered, and then it just keeps getting voted on down the way, and then the winner of it got to show their bike in the Born Free show. All of our bikes were there, but yeah, the winner got to be in the corral with the invited builders. The wildest 7 months of my life, because I always, maybe I bit off a little bit more than I could chew. I bought a Panhead, and I was a rider, and I was like, man, I kept going back and forth on if I was gonna do it or not, because I planned on putting in a different frame. I had a different frame and stuff, and I'm a machinist by trade, so I thought to myself, well, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna go all in, and I'm gonna just build everything. once I made that initial cut, then all I did was hang out here and at work for 7 months straight. I don't think I had any friends left after that because all I did was work on this thing. So my idea for the frame, I really like the way iron head frames look. I really like the way single down tube frames look, and I like the way wishbone frames look. So I took all those aspects and I wanted to do some things that were a little bit different. I like the way a straight backbone looks. So if you look inside of the bike, the backbone and the rear triangle are just a straight line. Yeah, there's no chain adjuster on there. I knew what my gear ratio was going to be because I wanted to be able to take it anywhere and go to highways, so I had that measured out from the old bike. So the same primary, same sprockets, same everything all the way through, and I just pulled those measurements all the way back. You can't really see it, but it does have a chain roller that I can adjust up. Based off like a stock Harley geometry, it's technically 3 up, 40 degrees. It's an inch shorter in the back, and the transmission is raised up. So I was trying to make the crank, the transmission shaft, and the rear axle one line. So I had all these like weird angles going in here that needed to add up, and it ended up working out good. I kept everything real tight. I like the way when stuff looks tight and compact, so that's why I notched the backbone around the head and the seat tube around the rear exhaust. Yeah, the front end, I pretty much took the measurements off a Wargasser tree just to see what their offset was. Yeah, I made the triple clamps out of stainless. My friend Mark Johnson at work helped me do that one night after work. The tubes are actually forking by Frank, but they're 35mm Harley show-off forks, just the tubes and the internals. But I had to make them so that they didn't have a taper on top. They're just squared. I just called them up, and I made those lowers out of seamless chromoly tubing that I had honed to fit these fork tubes, and I just put O-ring seals in them. And then I welded them, and then I work at a machine shop where we do cylindrical grinding. So I ground the outside diameter smooth, so it was almost like a chrome finish. And it's got a hidden axle too. It actually threads up from the bottom. The front end is 12 over, technically. Yeah, the foot controls I made bunged right into the frame. I knew exactly where I wanted them to be before I built the chassis. So once I knew where the engine was gonna be, I knew right where the center line of the crankshaft was gonna be. So the foot controls are all 3/16 stainless steel also, because I was thinking ahead a little bit, like, chrome is really expensive. So I was like, just try to use stainless wherever I can to cut down costs on it. It's actually a pretty wild story with the paint even. So I had done the first Boonie Bike beat off of all things, and Jamie, Blue Moon Customs, had painted the trophy, and it was a skateboard deck. It was really cool. He knew that I had won that trophy that he had painted, and when I started building it, he's like, "Hey man, you got anyone to paint your bike?" And I'm like, "No, I don't have anything." And he's like, "Well, let me know. And then I didn't hear from him or do anything, and I thought it was kind of weird. He just hit me up, and I'm like, there's no way I can afford that guy. Just knowing what he had done in the past and whatever. And finally I called him, and I'm like, well, I was gonna powder coat the frame, and he's like, oh my God, don't you dare, freaking out on me. And he's like, dude, just bring it here, I'll take care of you. He's like, well, what color? And I was like, I want to do purple. And he's like, I love purple. My dad used to build hot rods when I was growing up, and when I was really young, he built this 31 Ford that me and my brother were just in love with, and it was purple, and it was pretty 90s at the time. It had hot pig pinstripes on it, and so I'm like, it has to be purple. And it just so happened that Jamie is tight with Calico, who did the pinstriping on my dad's street rod in 1993 or 4 or something like that. So it just all came full circle. So Calico laid those flames on there. Kurt, who's in my shop with me, he builds mini bikes. He was always talking about running an internal throttle. I'm like, well, I want to run 7/8 bars. I got a 7/8 frame. There's no way I'm putting 1-inch bars on it. He's like, well, I found out that the Honda Trail 50 ran internal throttle in 7/8, so I bought all the parts. He's like, I'm gonna put it on my mini bike. He's like, when I do it, I'll write it all down, I'll figure it out. And you can buy all the parts from Honda for $30. It comes in a bag, so it's literally a Honda throttle assembly. You just mill the bar and drill it and tap it, and you got a Honda Trail 50 throttle on there. The exhaust was the very last thing I did, and I didn't know what the heck I was gonna do. And I just started grabbing scrap material. I like the look of the 2-in-1, like you see on some of the old 70s choppers, 60s choppers. They had that cool 2-in-1 exhaust, and I was like, just trying to keep the theme of keeping stuff real tight. And it worked out good because it's all one piece. I don't have any slip collectors or anything like that, and I can flex it just enough to pull it off the exhaust spigots, and yeah, it worked out great. When I started to do this project, I'm just like, this is a time for me to showcase my actual skill sets. Most people just knew me for riding bicycles, not knowing that I did a lot of fabrication and machining on the side. So when the opportunity came, I was in the right position, the right time just to go all in and build this for the show. I mean, if you're young and you're into bikes, I mean, take all your high school shop classes you can, learn how to weld, learn how to use a Bridgeport and a lathe, because then, I mean, the possibilities are endless for you. Try to go to your local bike shops if there's one, talk to the old guys. You know, sometimes a lot of those guys want to share that knowledge, especially the older bikers, and you never know what they might have in their garage. Maybe they'll be stoked and help you out.
Yeah, this bike, what was the name of that place in Chicago over Bravetown.
Yep.
Yeah, well anyways, the story on this, a guy named Keith came down to the mama tried, and the guy offered it to Carlos, and it was in pieces. It was a frame, wheels, half a motor, heads. It had to be assembled and put together, everything. So we made a deal, and I brought it back, and I started fishing all the parts, tried to stick with all the original stuff, you know. It took about a year to put together, a year and a half. I brought it back to the specs, you know, according to the books, the wiring, the diagrams, the right clamps, the right things that you could do. I mean, by no means am I a purist, but I try to get it back as close as possible. There's probably some things that are not to the specs the way they came out of the factory, because every bike is different. However, you know, the clamps and the wiring, I try to do the best I could to get it to that. Cass over there, Deluxe Restorations, he was a huge help. And his knowledge and I mean, that's the only place that you can walk in and you got a shopping mall of parts everywhere. So then these windshields and stuff, you know, you come across them. This windshield is an awesome piece right there that we found. We got a deal on that. He found that on Instagram. And I said, I gotta have that. A lot of the stuff on here, like that seat, I always liked the black and the khaki, looks classy. Heather's Leathers had that seat laying around, nobody wanted it, so I made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and I put that on there. You know, and the leather bags, I went to Davenport one time, and I was looking for, you know, the 5-hole mounting bracket on there, and lucky me, the first place that I went to, there's fucking Harley saddlebags, just the way you see them, $400 you want it. I said, here you go, you know. A lot of the pieces here, what was the tedious thing is getting that goddamn exhaust on by doing one-man show operation. Yeah, that Speedo it's an NOS OEM Speedo with 0 miles on it. And that came on that chopper that we dismantled to put this bobber back together. And looked at the Speedo, it was froze. It was froze, so I took it to this guy on 52nd and Billard here in Milwaukee. He goes, this has never been opened. This has got a little patina from shelf life. This is an OEM Speedo. And he loosened, it took him 2 weeks to loosen it up, and it works. So it's a 1-year Speedo, I was gonna sell it, and I says, well, because I got another one, I said, you know what, I'll put it on here, and I won't hook it up. I don't wanna put any miles on it, you know, but I had to have this shift knob. I saw this with the Harley Davidson emblem on there, gold to match my seat. I try to stick to a little color coordinating, you know, and you know, the windshield jumps out with the emblem, the khaki colored seat and the shifter, and some of these too. This guy, they're all glass. And I had pretty much all the engine parts. It was, I'm not a machinist by any means, so what I did is I took it to Rosholt Motorcycle Club up there in Rosholt. They put the motor together for me. They machined it out and everything, and from there I took off and slapped it in and made it fit. And you know, like I said, it took about a year. It took a year and a half to do. You know, there was a lot of trial and error stuff with this, like any other bike, but once I got it dialed in, and broken in, it's been great. You know, it's really, I got a lot of heart and soul in it. This is one of those that I wouldn't sell, but it's worth some good money, but it's the memories building it. I mean, I remember my grandson and my son Carl helping me with it, but I don't think I'd sell it. It's just gonna be passed on. But I do have some things for sale though.
Love it.
My name's Buzz, Travis, everyone calls me Buzz. It's a 93 to 2006 and every year in between. FXLR Frankenstein Bike. So it's a 93 FXLR frame, motors from a 06 bagger. It's got parts that were donated. It's got parts that we found in the garage laying around, so it's a little bit of everything. Ever since I learned about the FXR platform, found out you could do a twin cam in it. It's something that I've always wanted to do, and I came upon a frame and came upon a drivetrain and just wanted to make it happen. You start with the FXR frame, and everybody's gonna hate me who's the FXR guys out there, so I hate to say it, but you literally take all the stock braces out, you cut them out. I actually found a salvage Dyna 05 wide glide frame. You hack the cross member out of that. That's your new cross member in there, and surprisingly, the twin cam motor, I mean, it just bolts right in there. It bolts with all the stock motor mounts. I mean, anything from 99 to 2019 when they stopped doing twin cams, you can jam any of that drivetrain into these frames with proper modifications. The motor got a mild build on it, redid the cam plate, oil pump, the heads are decked. I ported the heads myself, polished the heads myself, bumped up the seat pressure on the springs a little bit just because I built it to try to blow it up. I haven't blown it up yet, but it'll happen. The shifter's reversed because it's a full bagger drivetrain. Normal guy comes to try to ride this thing, he's gonna try to start it in 5th gear, but it's actually 1 up, 4 down. Everybody thinks that you need to spend a bunch of money on doing the oil pan mod, where you need to machine it, you need to mill it, you need to cut it down, re-weld it. You don't need an oil pan. This thing, there's no oil on it. You just plug the holes in the trans and just run lines, run the stock oil bag. This is version 1. I mean, I really just wanted to get it together to be able to ride it this summer. There was a bunch of people that helped me put this together. I mean, I just had a lot of influence from people around me, other FXR guys. Being a garage builder is just, it's an escape. I mean, hanging out in the garage with your buddies, doing rad shit, building stuff, and then you go and break it, and you fix it, and you do it all over again. Nothing on this bike was meant to be on this bike. FXR frame and that platform to build around, I mean, I would do a twin cam swap in an FXR 100 times over.
Hi, my name is Chris Astrake, and this is my 1985 FXY Glide. So this bike came to me, I was dropping off my friend Matt Gardapi, Ride Drink Camp on Instagram, and he had this bike, which was just a project that Matt started 5 years ago. And I asked him, I'm like, what are you doing with all this stuff? He's like, well, I'm thinking about selling it. I said, selling it? Well, what if I bought it and we built it together? Not many people get to say that they built a bike with their best friend, you know, and this was my opportunity to do that. So I came in on this, it's gonna be my bike, but he's gonna see what this thing's gonna look like at the end of it. You know, he's not selling it to some dude, he's gonna have hands on it, and he's gonna be a part of this experience. Little did I know that it would literally torture him to death every step of the way to see a bike that he start, you know, go to finish. This was a hard bike to visualize its completion because It was a bike that was started by somebody else that I was taking on the project, and I wanted to do my best to still use a lot of the things that were started, but also make it my own. And one of the things that was started was the 41mm front end. The lowers were shaved and polished, had to use those, they just looked really good. The visor headlight complemented the 41mm front end pretty well, kind of gave it a nice classic look. The exhaust came out fantastic, and I thought it fit the bike really well. So this was a tricky frame to fabricate because 85 was the first year that they put Evos in a Y-glide frame. So they had to create a hump just to make room to fit the Evo engine into it. And then finding a hardtail for a 1-year bike was also tricky. The project was already started, but there were some things that needed to be figured out. The fender was done by 7 Metal West. The Sissy Bar was done by my friend Ian. He did all the fabricating in his garage. He literally said, how tall do you want it? He did all the math, he marked it up on his welding table. He welded the pivot points to the welding table. And we sat there with the torch on the table until it was cherry red, bending it. It came out absolutely perfect when we were done. Yeah, so the oil pan fit, it's the TT style oil pan, originally made for like shovelhead and knuckleheads. It's shorter, and this is quite literally the only horseshoe oil pan that will fit into this frame with just how this 1 year is and all that stuff. And it's tight. If you can see that the oil pan barely just clears the frame and also the clutch arm. This oil tank was tricky because the oil lines will not clear these Evo heads. The only solution that I found was to cut the nipples off and weld in a bung so I could screw in my own 90-degree MPT fittings so that way they come straight down out of the oil tank to clear the exhaust pipe, and they still just barely do that. So I wanted to do something a little bit different than just like your standard king queen. I wanted to create that passage just for no other reason other than just looks. What I didn't know is I was actually creating a little bit of a scenario where we had to fasten that back pad to the Sissy Bar and make it look clean. So we actually had to get creative. We used the Prism Supply taillight box light, and we actually got longer bolts to pass through the taillight to go into the back pad itself. So it's actually the taillight that's fastening the back pad to the Sissy Bar. I went with Prism Supply, their taillight, because it was small and compact. Not to mention that they're super, super bright. The engine has some work done to it. It's a 10 over Evo. It's got 10-to-1 Wiseco domed pistons on it. It's got Kibble white valves, fueling beehive springs. It's got S&S roller rockers, Andrews push rods, S&S tappets, S&S 565 cam. Thing goes. I chose green because anybody that knows me and knows motorcycles knows that I have the absolute worst luck with motorcycles. I've blown up 2 engines myself, rebuilt them. So the reason why I chose green is because I know that it's bad luck. And with this bike, I felt confident with it. I wanted to kind of meet the bad luck head on with it. And I was like, the only way I can do that is by painting this bike green. So the name of the bike is Bud, because my grandpa, his nickname growing up was actually Bud. I still remember hearing my great-grandma and my great-grandpa calling him Bud when we would go visit. I decided to take the name and put it on the points cover. That name written out is actually my grandma's handwriting, that I took a piece of paper and a pen to her and said, can you write Grandpa's nickname Bud? And I took it to a metal etcher and I had him etch the exact signature that she wrote out and put it on. There's a lot of people to thank for this bike. First and foremost, it's got to be Matt Gardapi for hanging in with me throughout this build. I know that I was using his garage, so I can only imagine how fast he wanted this thing out of there towards the end of it all. Got to thank Ian for just taking the time to do some of these intricate welding, these final welds for me, and just helping me to make this bike is what it is right now. Buzz for just kind of being a guy that I could call and ask a question. He was a big help when it came to hardware. Have to thank Brian Radman for teaching me how to wire this thing up. He literally drew out a diagram for me and said, this is what you need to do. I said, cool, I can do that. I gotta thank John Holter for the paint. He just absolutely nailed it. If I could give any advice to anybody that wants to build a bike is one, just do it. But 2, if you have any buddies that build bikes, you know, be a sponge. Absorb as much information as you can from them. You know, ask them for help. Don't be shy. Like, you're gonna get hung up. You're not gonna know everything. You know, building this with a friend, building this with a mentor was the only way that this bike would have been finished.
What's up, I'm Ian. This is my 1981 Shovelhead Build. So I bought a Fat Boy, found a guy on Craigslist, asked if he wanted to trade, and he's like, yeah, I'll take you up on that. Drove down to Illinois, traded him straight up, and here we are. You know, I've done a lot of Sportsters, wanted to get more into big twins. So I guess I wanted to do a Shovelhead because, you know, it's old enough and new enough to where it's, you know, like I've got friends that their everyday riders are a super reliable Shovelhead. So I was like, all right, let me do something that, you know, I haven't done yet. It's just a 6-over skinny Springer in the front. Instead of just finding a Springer somewhere, I got a hold of my friend Luke and I had him just make me one. It's all out of stainless. Came out amazing. It's not polished yet. You'll see it polished later. Hardtail on a regular stock frame, 16-inch rear tire, solid rim, and an invader in the front. And got a fully rebuilt ratchet top, king, queen, whatever. It'll be a 2-into-1 exhaust, fish tip, you know, maybe up sweep. I don't have like one of those guys in the car shows where they build up they draw the whole car out and show you, and they're like, this is what we're building. I'm just kind of going by, you know, the next piece at a time and seeing what we come up with. That's kind of how I've always done it. So I just want like a clean, classic, slick, like chopper. Coming from this side, we're gonna go this way. I think lowbrow is an extremely valuable resource. For someone like me, I usually just go on the internet, but when you go on their website, it's basically like everything you're looking for, you know. If you're looking for that one thing, I mean, chances are they have it. I suppose I didn't need to take it apart. Next time, lining, motor, trans, rear wheel, and then we're gonna mount the fender, which you guys will meet Ronster. Really excited for this build. Can't wait to see what we come up with, and I'm really excited to see people's reactions on what we come up with. I got another one of these tasty brews called my name. Liquid Encouragement. You know? There you go. We're gonna document a Shovelhead build, and Lowbrow has been nice enough to donate some parts for it. Let's do it. And then show the world my amazing knife skills. Got a few of these to start. Got some grips. The new AMF ones that they just came out with. One, they look cool. Coil. Oh, Jesus. The builder's bung kit. You should feel how heavy this is. Me personally, I'm not the world's best fabricator. I'm still learning. I just hate seeing when people drill a hole in something and drop a nut in it and then just weld it. Use some actual stuff that's made for it, made to last. You know, I mean, here's a whole bag of different sized assorted cope nuts and bungs and tabs, but there's also 2 of them. Yeah, those tabs are what's up. You know, I don't have any machinery in here, and I gotta hand make all those, and that kind of gets annoying after a while. We got some banners. Chain, hell yeah. Now I can finish my clutch. Just missing all the springs. My clevis mounts for my passenger pegs, fuel filter, and our 2-in-1 exhaust. Now I got it raw because I'm planning on cutting the end and extending it. I'm pretty sure it's gas box. I'm not pretty sure it is gas box. Sorry guys. I've owned the bike for a little over 3 years. When I originally bought it, didn't even use a full tank of gas even with the big guys. I just probably put I think I rode less than 20 miles and then put it in the garage, then winter hit. And then it sat in the garage and then instantly tore it apart. You need every piece to finish the bike, and every little bit helps, So I want to give a big shout out to Tyler and all the dudes at Lowbrow for letting this happen. It's been a long time coming. Basically all of my friends are bugging me, when are you going to start working on your bike instead of other bikes? And now I can finally do it, and with all the parts that I've been wanting to get, so let's make this happen. Hopefully I can make a cool bike out of it, and we'll see what it looks like when it's done. I just stabbed him out in this tank. We cut all the castings out here for the speedometer and all that. Here's the hole the speedometer went through. I know on your bike we dropped a top hat bung in here, but I just feel like if we reuse that hole, it's a little bit too far back, and I know we're splitting hairs here. Plus it's already hitting something there. So if we close it up to about there, which actually works, because so the cool thing is these come with the tongues already having your holes for you. Nice thing is they're slotted too, so it gives you a little, if you're off by a little bit, you can make it work. A lot of other tanks, you order them and they just have the tongue, and somehow, try to get a drill in there, you gotta come from underneath, and I don't know, just none of it's fun. It's just it saves you a step. So now we're gonna map out our new holes. It's about where I need to be, I think. Okay. 16 5/8. So I'm looking for 16 5/8. I got 16 5/8, so if Ian says it looks center, which sure as shit does. Let's see what it looks. I gotta stop. I'm always, my OCD, the older I get, gets worse and worse and worse, and I think everything's gotta be literally machine perfect. I'm gonna be riding or something and then look down and notice the gas tank's hanging a half a degree off. Get real. So now we're gonna bust out the drill. Not on my worst day, pal. There's one. There's two. Voila. Sits nice and flat. Quick little fusion tack. Moment of truth. It's like the final unveil. Here are the metal shavings. And that's how you mount a gas tank. We're going to tackle mounting one of these lowbrow manta ray fenders. So the reason why I went with this fender, really like the duckbill on the end. Just the shape, sides, every bike I've seen it on, it's just, you know, it seems like that's a really good go-to fender. So I'm gonna show what way I have been mounting fenders. First and foremost, get your whole drive line, rear tire where it needs to sit, tensioned, you know, that's where the tire's sitting. You need that first. Secondly, the way I've been doing it, just grab a chain, lay it on the tire, drop your fender on. These bungee cords are just gonna help hold it in place for you so you can walk away and get a good look at it. I think this is roughly where I had it. So that's just kind of a rough mock-up, easy spacing, you know. This is just for me, this is where I'm going with it. So we're gonna start with that. Another little trick I do, take a straight edge and okay, so now we know where that sits. There's our little mapped out spot. Since I'm using 5/16 threaded bungs, don't drill it to 5/16 because one, if you're gonna paint it, it's adding a coat. If you're gonna chrome it, it's adding a coat. Always go a little bit bigger. I don't go too crazy. I got 11/32, just a 30-second bigger than 5/16. Gives you that little bit of wiggle room. Always take your countersink bit, deburr it a little bit. Also looks nice and professional. Next step. In this case, I'm using some leather washers. Always want to put that in between. Okay, so I got them bolted in just a little loose if you gotta twist it. Mounting it this way from bolting it in, the only downside is you gotta bolt it from underneath, you know, with the tire in. But doing it this way, don't tack these in yet until you're all the way done, you know. So basically doing it this way, you can mount it with your tire on there. I like it. So now I just leave those like that, and now we're gonna work on this bottom one. Just gonna cut a piece to fit in here. It's a little bit bigger of a gap, and they don't make any bungs that long that you can buy, so we're gonna make our own. Now that we got the fender mounted, time to make a Sissy Bar. Now that we got the fender mounted, time to make a Sissy Bar. Okay, so first, I'm gonna map it all out on my table, tack down some bend points, figure out how tall, you know, just get in a bunch of numbers ready. First, I start off with figuring out how wide the base is, just right where it mounts on either of your axle plates. Mine in this case is 9 3/4 to each outside to outside. So I'm gonna find the center mark on the table, center mark, center line, measure out each way, and then just kind of start going from there. So we'll get started. And yes, soapstone is a lot easier to see, but I hate sharpening them. So if that's my bottom, Also too, just want to figure out how tall you want to go. We're gonna make a short one for this one. Yeah, let's do 26. I got all these random cut off drop pieces for whatever diameter you want, you know. You can chop the top and go straight across, you can round it, I mean, whatever you want. Give it kind of a wide bend. So we're gonna come up, kind of suck in tight over the brake rotor, get closer to the rim and tire. Now I'm gonna figure out where I wanna go from there to the fender. I know I wanna keep it pretty skinny up top. So now I just figured that out. Try to go 11.5 and see what that does. See what it looks like. So here's the first one. Didn't like how it turned out. So after filming yesterday, whipped up this new one, just changed the legs, widened it a little more, rounded these bottoms out, changed a couple bends here and there, but I like this one a lot better, so we're gonna roll with this one. I always put these countersinks in the bottom, like it just looks more professional. My little template, I'm just gonna good old arts and crafts time.